Welcome, brave souls, to a realm where shadows whisper secrets too vile for the light. I'm here to unravel tales so chilling that your skin will crawl long after the silence falls. Help me reach my first 1,000 subscribers, hit that button now, and together, let's unearth the horrors awaiting us tonight. The summer sun had just begun to warm the highlands when Leandro and I arrived at my grandfather's village. The village, nestled between towering mountains and dense forests, had a charm that whispered of fairy tales and peaceful days. I began to look for work and was eager to start my new goat herding job, a well-paid job that also allowed me to be close to nature. In my first days here, the locals greeted me with warm smiles and curious eyes. However, their friendly demeanor turned mysterious when they began to share with me an old superstition. Don't sleep under the mountain at dawn. They spoke with a seriousness that hinted at a deeper fear, but I couldn't help but see it as a scare tactic of the locals. After all, what else could sleeping at dawn be but peaceful? The first few days passed peacefully, filled with the simple joy of watching the goats graze on the lush slopes. The air was fresh, the scenery was breathtaking, and the silence was comforting. But as I lay down to rest one evening, the villagers' warnings echoed in my mind, a gentle alarm that I chose to ignore, trusting in the safety of the peaceful countryside. Little did I know, dawn was about to bring more than just the light of a new day. The mist was thick and heavy as I tried to get some sleep on the slopes. Around 4 a.m., a loud rustling woke me. The goats were stirring, their usual calm disrupted by something invisible. Rubbing the sleep from my eyes, I looked out into the misty darkness. At first, my vision blurred, but then I saw a figure standing near the trees. It had the head of a goat and the body of a naked man, a strange mix that made me shiver. I blinked hard, thinking it was just my tired eyes playing tricks on me, but when I looked again, it was still there. The creature didn't move to attack. It just stood there, watching me with slow, deliberate blinks. It seemed to be studying me, trying to figure out who I was. What worried me even more was the way it seemed to mimic my breathing, its chest rising and falling with my breaths. It felt like it was learning, adapting to my presence. As the first light of dawn began to filter through the mist, the figure disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving me alone with the goats and my heart pounding with fear and curiosity. What had I just witnessed? And why did it feel like it was the beginning of something much bigger? For several days after that unpleasant encounter, I couldn't get the image of that strange figure out of my mind. Night after night, I was haunted by dreams filled with its presence, its slow blinks, and the strange way it mimicked my breathing. I needed answers, so I decided to visit my grandfather at his house in the village. I shared my visions with him, hoping to receive some wise advice, or at least some comfort. But he just brushed me off as a figment of my imagination. Frustrated, I was about to leave when an old woman sitting nearby heard my story. Her face was pale, and she looked genuinely frightened. She told me she had seen something similar years ago, a creature with the head of a goat and the body of a human. What caught my attention was her description of its voice. Hoarse and emitting something incomprehensible, like a broken tongue not meant for humans. My heart skipped a beat when I realized she had quoted the exact sound I had heard in my dream the night after my encounter. This revelation sent shivers down my spine. I wasn't the only one imagining it. Others had seen it too. The mystery deepened, and I knew I had to learn more about this creature. With the old woman's words echoing in my mind, I knew I had to find proof of what I had seen. He gifted me his camera, and I headed back up the mountainside as dusk fell over the village. The sight was breathtaking, the soft glow of the setting sun illuminating the peaceful landscape. I felt a surge of excitement as I began taking pictures, hoping to capture any sign of this mysterious creature. After only a few minutes of taking pictures, the air grew heavy and a shadow emerged from the trees. My heart raced as I realized that this time there was not just one creature, but two. They stood still, their heads tilted slightly towards me, as if they could sense my presence. I snapped pictures frantically, hoping to capture this surreal moment. Then, one of the creatures opened its mouth, and a hoarse, broken sound came out, a severed tongue trying to form words. My camera, which had been recording, suddenly went silent, capturing only a still image and the faint sound of a small bell. The creature stared at me for a moment longer before disappearing into the darkness, leaving me alone with my chaotic thoughts, and the camera unable to capture the evidence I so desperately needed. Determined to discover more about the mysterious shadows, I ventured deeper into the woods, hoping to find some evidence. As I circled the hill, I stumbled upon a hidden hut. Inside, I met Darian, a hermit who had lived there since he was a teenager, abandoned by his parents. Now old and unable to leave, he had chosen to stay on this hill, drawing memories and images of what he had seen over the years. Among his drawings, I discovered the unmistakable silhouette of the goat-headed man. My heart pounded as Darian shared his knowledge with me. He explained that these creatures were called guardians of the ridge, ancient spirits who guarded this sacred wilderness. They did not attack unless they felt someone was disrupting their way of life. Darian's words gave me a new perspective on my encounters. These were not just random ghosts. They were guardians of this land. But the question remained in my mind: what had I done to attract their attention? As I left Darian's hut, I felt both enlightened and more determined than ever to understand my role in this mysterious story. As the early morning mist shrouded the mountains, I couldn't escape the haunting question: what have I done wrong to affect the lives of those spirits, who constantly appeared in both dreams and real life? Fear gripped me. I decided it was time to leave the village, but as I tried to find a way out, I realized I was trapped in a time loop. Every dawn, the same path repeated itself, and the footsteps of those spirits echoed with a sickening sound that chilled me to the bone. Days passed in terror as I remained trapped, yearning to escape and return to my grandfather with this unbelievable story, yearning for a normal life. I cried, screamed, and begged to be freed, but the loop only tightened. Then, in a flash of light, Darian appeared again. Seeing my pitiful state, he showed me a way out. He explained that I had to face the guardians, those ghosts, and erase my memories of them in order to escape. I had to stand before them and recite a spell. Darian gave me two options. One was to choose to recite the spell and forget, or be trapped forever. With trembling determination, I faced the spirits and spoke the spell words Darian had given me. Forget, and be free. Do not remember the memories of us. As the last word left my lips, the loop broke. Darian quickly disappeared, and I felt the burden of memories lifted from my mind. I quickly left, making sure not to leave behind any items that could tie me to this place. As I passed Darian's hut, I bowed my head in thanks for his guidance. Finally free, I walked away from the mountain, leaving the guardians and their sacred wilderness behind, hoping never to return. The warm breeze of the Philippine countryside greeted me as I stepped out of the car onto the dusty road leading to San Inez farm. It felt like I was returning to a cherished memory. Only now, the farmhouse remained silent, left by my late grandmother Rosa. At the age of 27, Clara, me, along with my sisters Marco, Tessa, and Leanne, planned to provide a new biogas plant in the old place, transforming it into a cozy retreat in the countryside. As we walked out, the familiar creaking noise of the wooden floors under our feet and the smell of aged wood filled the air, stirring a sense of nostalgia and comfort within me. We laughed and told each other stories of our childhood adventures here, but as the night fell, an uneasy feeling began to creep in. The first night at the ranch was supposed to be a celebration of new beginnings, but as I lay in bed, the shadows seemed to dance with a life of their own. Unable to sleep, I wandered to the window, my gaze drifting toward the barn. That was when I saw it, a sleek, unfazed figure walking across the barn. My heart pounded, but when I called out to my siblings, none of them saw anything. Was my imagination playing tricks on me, or was there something lurking in the shadows of San Inez Ranch? It was late at night when Marco announced that he wanted to go to the nearby town to pick up some supplies. We exchanged greetings as he left. A half hour later, the front door swung open, and Marco walked in. His shoes were covered in mud, and he walked through the hallway in silence, his face devoid of any emotion. Without saying a word, he went into the bathroom, but when we went inside to check, he was nowhere to be found. As we tried to figure out what was going on, had Marco really returned? How could Marco have returned when he had just walked through the door a few minutes ago? In the midst of our confusion, I noticed something cold in the hallway. The glass that had reflected my family's comings and goings had darkened. Engraved on its surface were the words, "One returns, one must stay." A shiver ran down my spine as I realized that whatever was happening at the San Inez Ranch was not over yet. One afternoon, the rain fell heavily against the windows of the farmhouse, creating a gentle backdrop to an otherwise peaceful afternoon. While everyone was resting, I wandered around the house, my mind still reeling from the strange events of the past few days. As I passed the kitchen, I caught a glimpse of Tessa. I thought it was her. She was in need of rough attitude, her movements precise and familiar. But when I called out to her, the answer came from upstairs, Tessa, blinking and confused, confirming that she had been asleep the whole time. My heart skipped a beat as I returned to the kitchen, only to find it empty. The figure was gone, without a trace. It was another surprise after another. That night, the whispering began. Leon, who was sleeping restlessly in his room, was awakened by a soft, persistent call. It beckoned him to the large acacia tree that stood sentinel at the back of the farm. The whispers grew more insistent, their urgency evident in them, impossible to ignore. Finally, curiosity got the better of him. Leon slid out of bed, following the haunting sound. As he approached the tree, the whispers seemed to dance around him, drawing him closer. But as soon as he reached the base of the tree, the shadow led him away into the night. The next morning, the house was filled with the usual sounds of breakfast and conversation, but Leon was nowhere to be seen. Panic set in as we searched every corner of the farm and the surrounding areas. Finally, Marco was the one who discovered him, lying unconscious at the base of the acacia tree. We rushed to his side, our hearts pounding with fear. As we gently picked him up, we noticed old bruises on his arms marks that looked strangely like he had been tied up with rope. The realization hit us like a cold wave. Whatever was haunting our family was not just a figment of our imagination. It was real and dangerous. Leon, still recovering from her injuries, was allowed to rest in the house. As the day wore on, strange events continued to pile up, leaving us all on edge. We gathered to discuss the disturbing events, but the more we talked, the more confused we became. It felt like we were caught in a web of mystery that we couldn't solve. That night, as if on cue, the lights flickered and then went out, plunging the farmhouse into darkness. Marco and I quickly lit candles, hoping to dispel the darkness that seemed to grow thicker with each passing second. But as the flames flickered, we realized we were not alone. Figures that looked strangely similar to us began to wander the house, mimicking our past actions. My heart pounded as I watched these doppelgangers move silently around us, their presence both familiar and terrifying. The tension was unbearable, and I felt a wave of anxiety and fear wash over me. Desperate for some semblance of normalcy, I searched the house, my eyes darting from shadow to shadow. That was when I stumbled upon my great-grandmother Rosa's diary, tucked away in a corner. By the flickering candlelight, I sat down and began to read, hoping to find some solace in her words. As I dug deeper into the pages, the truth began to emerge. Rosa had written of a curse that had fallen on the land during the war, when a villager had betrayed the town and was hanged from the same acacia tree that had haunted Leon. She had written that his rage had given birth to the Hollow One spirits that could take the form of living humans. This realization was painful. The visions we had seen, the strange events, they were all manifestations of the Hollow Ones. And according to Rosa's diary, the only way to free my family from this curse was to appease the Hollow One's rage. The weight of this discovery weighed heavily on my shoulders, but it also gave rise to a glimmer of hope. We had a chance to end this nightmare. The full moon cast an eerie glow over the barn and the acacia tree as I huddled with Tessa and Marco, poring over the pages of Rosa's diary. There, amidst the faded ink, we found a glimmer of hope, a ritual that promised to appease the rage of the Hollow Ones. It involved using a mirror and fire in the barn, a simple yet daunting task. With a plan in mind, we set out to lure the doppelgangers to the barn. The night air was thick with tension as we positioned ourselves, waiting for the spirits to follow our lead. As the moon reached its zenith, the figures began to emerge, drawn by our presence. Once they were inside the barn, we started the ritual. The fire flickered wildly as we placed the mirror at the center, its surface reflecting the ghostly figures that surrounded us. The air grew heavy with the weight of the curse, but we pressed on, determined to break free from its grasp. As the flames danced higher, the spirits began to be drawn into the mirror, their forms twisting and dissipating into the glass. Relief washed over me as one by one, the Hollow Ones vanished, their rage seemingly quelled. But just as we thought it was over, one spirit broke free, slipping through our grasp and disappearing into the night. Exhausted but hopeful, we extinguished the fire and turned to leave the barn. As I glanced into the mirror one last time, a shiver ran down my spine. My reflection smiled at me a moment before I could muster a smile of my own. The realization hit me hard. The ritual had worked, but the battle was far from over. One Hollow One remained, and we needed to be ready for whatever came next. The morning sun filtered through the windows of the farmhouse, casting a soft glow over the chaos of the past few days. After the ritual, we gathered in the living room, exhausted but relieved. We had managed to appease the rage of the Hollow Ones, but the escape of one spirit lingered in our minds. It was clear what we had to do next. With heavy hearts, we started packing up our belongings. The decision unanimous: we had to leave San Inez farm forever. The place that once held so many cherished memories now felt tainted by the curse we had barely escaped. As we loaded the last of our bags into the car, I took one final look at the farmhouse, a mix of sadness and relief washing over me. We drove away in silence, the weight of our experiences hanging in the air. As I glanced into the car's rearview mirror, my heart skipped a beat. There, where my reflection should have been, was nothing but an empty space. A chill ran down my spine as I realized the escaped Hollow One was still with us somehow. Without a word, I reached over and quietly locked the car door, a small act of defiance against the unseen presence. As we sped off, leaving the countryside behind, I knew our journey wasn't over. The last Hollow One remained, a shadow lurking just out of sight, and we would have to face it head-on wherever our path led us next. It was the summer of 1992, and I, Ellie, was 6 years old and full of excitement and mischief. My cousins, Mara, Jake, and Lila, and I were at my grandparents' house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The air smelled of pine and the promise of adventure, especially since we were right next to the infamous Hollow Pines forest. Hollow Pines was more than just a forest. It was the heart of every ghost story and urban legend in our town. Today, I had convinced my cousins explore the woods with me. We were armed with only flashlights and a lot of courage, or maybe just my stubbornness. As we entered the forest, towering ancient trees loomed before us, their branches whispering secrets. The forest was eerily quiet, but filled with strange sounds that made my heart race. We were all curious and scared, but I was determined to prove that I wasn't. We'd only been walking for a few minutes when a sudden gust of wind blew through, extinguishing our flashlights. It was strange because the sun was still high in the sky, casting long shadows, but still providing plenty of light. It felt like the forest was pushing us back, rejecting our presence. We pressed on, the thrill of the unknown pulling us deeper into Hollow Pines. The deeper we went into Hollow Pines, the denser the forest became, the dimmer the light. That's when we stumbled upon it, a rusted, burned-out truck, nearly swallowed up by encroaching vines. It was like a relic from another time, and we couldn't help but sit nearby, drawn by its mystery. We began to tell strange stories. Mara, the best storyteller, told us about the Crimson Wanderer. She said it was the story of a woman who escaped from a secret government psychiatric ward and disappeared into this very forest. I listened, trying to stay calm, but something about the story, or maybe the forest itself, made me feel like we weren't alone. Like someone, or something, was watching us from the shadows. Then Jake pointed to strange symbols carved into the bark of a nearby tree. They looked old, maybe from last summer, but none of us could make out what they were. It was strange, like the forest was trying to tell us something, but we weren't ready to listen yet. Dusk fell over Hollow Pines, casting a dark shadow over everything. We were still reeling from the stories and strange symbols when a cold wind suddenly picked up, causing the trees to sway and make ominous sounds. I turned around, and there it was, a red cloth, almost like a silk curtain floating in the air. It moved quickly, weaving between the trees without touching a single branch. My cousins screamed and ran, but I wasn't so lucky. I stumbled and fell back, my heart pounding in my chest. The red cloth drifted closer, and I swore I could hear a soft whisper, a language I'd never heard before. It was eerie, as if the forest itself was speaking to me. As I stared, frozen in fear, something even stranger happened. For just a moment, an eye seemed to open inside the folds of the cloth, looking straight at me. Then, just as quickly, it disappeared. That was all the motivation I needed. Terrified, I quickly got up and ran as fast as I could, catching up with my cousins. We didn't stop until we were safely back at my grandparents' house, the memory of that red drift haunting me every step of the way. That night, back at my grandparents' house, I couldn't shake the creepy feeling from the woods. I drifted into a fitful sleep, haunted by vivid dreams of a red curtain and an unknown woman. In the dream, I also saw her in a red uniform, staring out a locked window, her lips moving as if she were muttering, "Get out." I woke with a start, the image still fresh in my mind. I needed answers, and I knew exactly where to start my grandmother's house. I snuck into the attic, rummaging through old boxes and forgotten memories until I found it, a newspaper clipping from a decade earlier. It was about a missing nurse who had disappeared from the Blackhurst Center, a high-security psychiatric hospital. My heart raced as I read the details, connecting the dots between the red cloth and this mysterious disappearance. The next morning, I shared the newspaper clipping with my cousins. Their eyes widened as they read, but Lila's reaction surprised me the most. She confessed that she had seen the red figure before, coming to a house without a number. Prompted by haunting dreams and whispers that wouldn't let me go, I decided to bring my brothers back to Hollow Pines at dusk. The woods felt more ominous, as if they were holding their breath. We were determined to face our fears, to find out what was really going on. As I walked deeper into the woods, I discovered an old storm drain, its surface engraved with the same strange symbols we had seen before. I was afraid as I approached. Inside, I heard a faint cry, which chilled me to the bone. Suddenly, red curtains burst from the drain, shooting towards me like a net. I froze, unable to move, but just before they reached me, my cousins pulled me out, and we all ran once more. Before we fled, we tried to take a video of the drain. Back at the house, we played it back, and when we watched it again, we saw in the background a figure in a nurse's uniform, looking straight into the camera. It sent shivers down our spines, confirming that whatever was happening in Hollow Pines was not over yet. We then decided to wander around the neighborhood to discuss the unusual occurrences. Strangely enough, on the way, we discovered the abandoned house. It had now been resurfaced after city workers had cleared the nearby lots. Curiosity got the better of us, and we crept inside, eager to learn more about the mystery that had haunted us. The walls were covered with scrawled notes in Greek, English, and Latin, each adding to the eerie atmosphere. As we explored further, we stumbled upon an old identification card lying on the floor. It read, "Nurse Callista Drivus, Blackhurst Center." My heart skipped a beat. This had to do with the missing nurse in the newspaper clipping. Suddenly, the house began to creak and groan, a sound that sent a chill down our spines. Before we could react, red cloth began to pour through the cracks in the walls, swirling around us like ghostly tendrils. The sight was horrifying, and we were all momentarily paralyzed with fear. Then we discovered a final note pinned to the floor, reading, "She never left. She just learned to drift." The message was haunting. We rushed out of the house, running as fast as we could to my grandparents' house. Summer was coming to an end, and we decided it was time to leave Hollow Pines. But as we packed up, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over yet. Years have passed since that summer in Hollow Pines, but the memories are still there, haunting me like a shadow. I am an adult now, living far from that strange forest, but the red veil of our adventures never really leaves us. It follows us into our dreams, a constant reminder of what we have been through. One by one, my cousins began to sleepwalk, each stopping before a mirror, as if drawn by something invisible. I still hear soft whispers in my sleep, a language I cannot understand, but can never forget. I thought moving away would help me escape the past, but it seems the past is not over for me. Those psychological hauntings will certainly take a long time to heal. Like, the pain can pass, but the psychological wounds are hard to heal.